Welcome to Turek Books Podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm your host, Joshua Turek. We're never going to read all the books we want, but when someone tells us about a book, that's its own valid form of experiencing it. Our guests come in to talk about the books that left lasting marks on them as readers, and that becomes a springboard to who they are, who I am, and maybe who all of us are. So sit back, relax, and enjoy it. And who knows, maybe you'll end up grabbing a book or two. Maybe you've read some of them and it's nice to hear someone else talk about them. We want this to be like a book club, but without the guilt. Thank you for tuning into another episode of Turek Books. I'm so excited for our guest today. She's a writer for magazines like Teen Vogue, Dirt, Paper Magazine, and that's how I first discovered you. You're friends with my wife, but she got me turned on to your writing, and I've just been a fan ever since, so I'm glad we get to finally meet.
Yeah, no, I think this is the best way to meet or make new friends, too. And I figured that if Siobhan, your wife, for the listeners, loves someone so much to marry them, then they must also be equally amazing. So
that's nice. I think I've been bringing up my wife so much that now when you Google my name, one of the things that comes up is Joshua Turek wife. So I gotta
big wife guy.
Yeah, wife guy. I did quick work on that one because it's only been a few months. Yeah. Yeah, and she said she'd been talking with you, and I was like, oh, she'd be great for the podcast. And she had nothing but great things to say. So I'm happy to have you in. How's your reading life these days?
My reading life is good. I started off the year wanting, I had a goal for myself of 25 or whatever books per year this year. But I started that because I didn't read that much for a few years. I think during the pandemic, I think I didn't really fall to books as my coping mechanism. But I was always a reader, and I think it's nice to go back into books that I really don't know anything about. I tried this new thing where I just don't know anything about the summary of a book or any reviews of a book, and just going in blind and just whatnot. So that's been a fun way. And also, I looked at my Goodreads because that's just kind of how I keep track of what I am into. And myself, 10 years, I think I started tracking it 10 years ago, in 2014, or no, around then. But it was just all very academic or nonfiction, information-based books. And I think that I've seen a trend for myself in recent years where I'm looking for more historical fiction or just fiction in general, which has been an interesting exploration. And sadly, it takes a nap for me to be able to track that sort of journey, but it is kind of nice and interesting to see where I fall.
And are you having a little more fun with the fiction?
I am. Yeah. I am also a part of a book club with two of my friends that I met through an old job. And we had to take a break because we were just finding books off of Book Talk, and seeing what people are really hyping up or really hating, and then we just picked that book up. We picked up A Little Life because none of us have read it. It was very it was a very divisive book for all of us. Actually, we were all we did not love it at all.
It's called A Little Life?
Yeah, by Hanya, I forget her last name.
Yeah. But it was a bestseller kind of thing.
Yeah, I don't know if you've read if you've seen the cover of the man. It's a black and white cover with the man and he's holding his head and he's really strained.
Maybe.
I think from the Book Talk realm, it's become very divisive and controversial because a lot of Gen Zers, when they revisit books that that were made in generations before them, they like to in a good way, even pick apart what might be problematic about the book. But it was kind of just trauma porn for a lot of the book talkers.
Okay.
And so I won't spoil it. It's also a 1,000-page book, which is not really my vibe either. But we read it and we're damn, we need a minute to just what do we do to ourselves?
Yeah.
And so we resumed it recently with a new book, and that's been a lot more fun.
Okay. Yeah.
It's called Against the Loveless World by Susan Alawaya. about a Palestinian freedom fighter.
Oh, good.
And it's
fiction or nonfiction?
Historical fiction.
Okay.
The character is based in Kuwait. And I'm only in the start of it, but so far it's just really great read. It's really intimate and feels culturally relevant and topical, but also just addresses a lot of issues around misogyny that we see both here and overseas. So, yeah.
I mean, that's sounds like a super important and beautiful book. Also, it also reflects on how hardcore that previous book must have been, that this was like the fun one.
This is the fun one.
Yeah.
No, I think I don't know, like it's just.
But that is cool. Like,
serious,
I mean, in that big conversation right now with Palestine and all the rest of it is like, yeah, like supporting art, because this is ultimately what people want to do with their lives. They're not trying to like live these crazy political lives so much as express their experiences. So it's cool that you're doing that. You're reading fiction, because I'm reading the Angela Davis Ferguson Palestine book right now.
Oh, nice.
Written in 2014. Great book. Angela Davis she's just so good at, I mean, she's just so articulate and at pinpointing things, and so coldly rational. Yeah. And yet reading her words fills you with hope. Yeah. And motivation to try to do your part in making the world a better place.
Yeah. Like, and then also like you would appreciate this as a poet. There's a lot of Palestinian writers and authors right now who are getting a lot of attention because they lean into poetry. They began as poets, and even the character within this book, Against the Loveless World, it's like she is a poet first, or she is a human being first, but then poetry is just her way of expressing things that you wouldn't be able to. When words fail, there's poetry for her. And she really leans into her love of dancing and just how she feels in her body, and a lot of that is tied into like her just how she had kind of processed a lot of things through poetry too. And so it's a really touching book, as heavy as it may be, or that people might be like, oh, like this seems topical, but also it's just kind of universal. It's like anything that's hard or traumatic or like just very atrocious. Like I think poetry just is a lot like is what people go to when you are a part of a group that is oppressed or silenced or sensationalized. So
yes, or even dealing with the micro conflicts on your day-to-day existence, which almost feels like our Western luxury in what we can create. It's like, oh yeah, I'm so insulated by all of this sort of theft basically that keeps me comfortable, that I can make little videos about what being a millennial's like. You know, and it's like, yeah, everyone should be able to speak to, you brought up the word universal, some of those universal truths of just the experience, even when things are relatively sane around you. And if insane, yes, you know, obviously speak about that too. But.
I've just been thinking recently about, and I know like we have books to discuss kind of to further this, but just kind of like what small things we do hold on to, like to make ourselves feel a bit more grounded or to find hope. Because I think going back to Angela Davis, like there is no moving forward through any sort of global conflicts or our own sort of what terrors are terrorizing ourselves at home, like without hope. Like hope is the greatest organizer for amongst all of us. And it's just nice to find like what brings you joy outside of just what makes your high cortisol levels jump up every single day. So
we had a guest, Dallas Goldtooth, come on, and he recommended this book, Pleasure Activism, that kind of speaks to that point. It's something that I've had bookmarked, like, okay, I should probably get to that. And in Angela Davis's book, speaking of to that point, she said something like optimism of will, pessimism of the mind. You know, she quoted someone else who said that, and I thought that was such a nice way of putting it.
I'm like, why does our brain do that? Like phones are definitely the problem.
I think she was speaking almost like you need that pessimism toward the world.
It's a necessity.
You got like, hey, no, I know what you mean. Maybe she didn't use the word pessimism.
I mean, I think it's good to feel like your brain is responding to these things that you see in front of you that are just like the headlines or whatnot and be like, this sucks or whatever. But
exactly.
like we need our brains for that. But I think
A realism, I guess.
yeah, a sense of realism is very healthy for us. But yeah, I wish that sometimes it didn't feel exacerbated or by this sense of hopelessness because of what we further see on phones and whatnot.
So. Oh, you're right. The hopelessness.
Yeah.
I mean, the windows into every mode of suffering you can dial up on the menu until like it turns on us when we endure whatever ours are to whatever degrees. And it's a confounding time to live, and it's so strange that we are the ones who find ourselves in it. Especially because, you know, I'm 39, so I am that elder millennial who's like, we had both worlds. I memorized my friends' phone numbers, and now I don't know my mom's phone number.
Right.
You know, it's that straddled line between a real big change in technology and then an acceleration of the graphic revolution.
Yeah.
Which, I'm reading, I keep bringing it up, but I'm reading this book, The Image. It was written in 1961, just about how, because of the acceleration of the graphic revolution, so much more information had to be invented just to feed the insatiability of the media and the public. I'm thinking about it nonstop.
Yeah, that sounds like an awesome book.
Awesome book. Yeah, really kind of impactful and really insane how this was already seen in 1961, pre-internet era, and how much further spiraled we are into it.
Well, that's true. I feel like that's like even during the mid 1900s, photography became like the big like vessel for information and for news and for feelings. And I think there are a lot of critics that have come out of that saying like every image is not really objective. It's to make you feel something, or to like at worst propaganda, but it's always to make you feel something or to question something. And the image becomes the story more than the story. Like, so the experiencing of it could be totally different from the image, but if they tack on their headline to the image, that's what the image means. And he even talks about like vacationing in museums, and how like you're seeing everything in a museum that's totally out of its original context. And the word tourist attraction, those words weren't even invented until 1910. And so then they'd create all these artificial representations of a culture that weren't actually the culture. They were just attractions, means of getting people to sort of fall prey to the images or the sights and sounds that were totally detached from their original purpose of just living. That feels like Los Angeles.
Like to incredibly, right?
Yeah.
And like, you know, you point toward like the Kardashianism of the world, and like I go to the Erewhon and all the tourists go there now, and they buy the $20 smoothies, and the first thing they do is take that photo of the
Hailey
smoothie.
Bieber smoothie.
Yeah, the Hailey Bieber smoothie. They don't drink it. And I wonder if they I don't know. It's like it's just about taking the photo, but do they feel the cold smoothie in their hand and recognize it? Do they, taste it, or do they enjoy it? I don't know. And
it's like, it's weird to see what becomes symbols of the lush life in LA that any other Angelino, I think you're from Los Angeles?
Yeah, I'm from the Valley.
Oh, you're from the Valley. I grew up in the South Bay, where it's like I feel like we're a little bit more grounded in what is around us. Like, I never paid attention to palm trees until, like your friend who moves from, I don't know, the Midwest comes in as like all these gorgeous palm trees in Echo Park. And you're like, these were just like artificially like planted there. They're not like from Los Angeles or, even with the smoothies, it's like anyone who is coming to visit me as a friend from like college, they're like, let's go check out Erewhon. And I'm like, there's really, I mean, sure, but you're just going to go into a cold grocery store and you're just going to be appalled by the prices, and you're going to think that's how all of us live. We just pay $20 for everything. But
that's right. No, and at its core, why that grocery store is successful is because most of the food just isn't processed, or it's like organic, and it's like at its core that grocery store exists because some people are wealthy enough to not be poisoned by their food.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's just like, the fact that it's a tourist attraction, and yet we're not realizing that most Angelenos do not shop there.
Yeah.
I'll go get a sandwich there or whatever because it's pretty much the same price. It's close by.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, no, it's I'll get burritos there now too because it's like they're the same price everywhere.
That's so true. $20 burritos are kind of a crime.
Kind of a crime.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're talking about growing up here. I read a fact, only 1 out of 100 people even works in the entertainment industry in LA.
Oh, in LA.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know why it gets so like bloated. And not the numbers get bloated, but people just have this idea that like, actually it's interesting because when I'm in an Uber or if I'm in public transportation and I get like just strike up a conversation with somebody, like we are never under that pretense of like, but you and I work in Hollywood per se. And I think like, but then I don't know.
It's because the loudest voices are those 1 out of 100.
Totally.
And the media amplifies them.
Yeah.
And the social media amplifies them, and they're the story. They're the image.
That's true. And they just know how to maintain that image. They know how to work social media and whatnot. And I'm not bashing anyone in it, but that's just kind of like.
I am. I'm bashing them.
Yeah.
And you become an embodiment of the image that the major corporations want. Like you are the human embodiment of their messaging.
Yeah.
No, whether you think you're not or whatever. Like I'm on Instagram, I do all my videos there, but like ultimately I'm just feeding a medium.
Yeah.
And that medium is governed by shareholders of a social media company.
Yeah.
Who just want to make money.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I don't know. Yeah, I trip out on that. Yeah, because being from here, it's not something I think about. I do have a fondness for the palm trees just because of their kind of, I don't know, like when the sun's setting behind a palm tree, it could look kind of pretty.
Yeah.
Also, I did find out there's some of the oldest living organisms in the world. Like a palm tree could live longer than most things.
Yeah.
And that most of them are going to die at the same time in LA because they were all planted at the same time.
There's like the oldest palm tree, I think, is in MacArthur Park, or there's like 2 really tall trees that are, I forget the cross streets, but they're on the corner of MacArthur Park, and they were planted there 100+ years ago, and I think they were the first ones. And you look at them now, and like they're definitely on the brink of death, or they are dead, but they're just kind of still there. But like the leaves are just like crunchy and like brown, and it's just a tall stalk. It's very disconcerting.
Yeah. No, and I mean, it's in the right place.
It's in the right
because when you walk around MacArthur Park, you're not talking about the cover of Variety magazine.
That's true.
Yeah, that day.
That's like
to
a real
your
place.
point, you know what I mean?
No, that's
like,
a real.
It's just a real place.
Yeah, it is.
And I was there like a month or 2 ago. Actually, I had my bachelor party at Langer's. My brother and I ate a Reuben's pastrami Reuben together.
Okay.
That was my bachelor.
So that corner closest to Langer's has the 2, like you'll see them, like the 2 tallest palm
trees. Those right there,
are the oldest guys.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I took a lap. I walked around it. I also rode my bicycle through it one night, and there was a person who'd built a campfire under a tree, and the lake was like kind of shimmering, and it was very kind of haunting.
Yeah.
I almost felt like I was passing through a ceremony.
Yeah.
But yeah. And when we were teenagers, I don't know if your friends went there to buy fake IDs. But, okay.
Still there. I think they're still there. I did a walk a few months ago, and the vendors are still kicking it.
They do the thing with their hands where they're like, huh?
Yeah. Like all these like different states and stuff. Yeah, I love MacArthur Park. I just moved from out of Westlake into Glendale.
Oh, okay.
And so I would walk over to MacArthur Park all the time. And there was night herons there last summer, or like even like I think over the winter.
Night herons, the birds?
Yeah, the night herons.
Wow.
But I don't know. It's just a magical place. Like it's haunting. It's random. It's
random.
Yeah.
I remember there used to be pedal boats there.
Yeah.
I don't know when those went away, but
I love like just romanticizing LA with another Angeleno, because
the details start to awaken in you, and you're like, oh yeah,
things that I forget when I'm not talking just like with anyone else in any other capacity.
Yeah, and like to that bigger point we were talking about, is like when you're talking about living, like the fabric of living, not just the idea of it, which it does exist. But anyway, that I'd love to hear about your books, because we got into what you've been reading currently.
Yes,
I'm excited to see your stack. You can
I'll
bring them all up, and
right.
whatever you want to start with. I'm just curious.
Okay. Well, I was thinking about which books to bring and whether I could like find a theme to all of them. And a few did come out. Like I initially really wanted to talk about what's on my mind, which is how much I hate summer actually. Like I don't like if there is, and I think there are studies that point to seasonal affective disorder obviously for winter, but the less studied season is summer because symbolically summer means you have a lot of free time, you're out in the sun, there's more daylight. Like of course you're going to be happy, of course you're going to have so many activities, but for myself, and I'm not diagnosing myself in this, but like summer is like the most lethargic time of the year for me. I need to be in the dark, or like I think because I overheat really fast, and I need to I just get so sleepy. I sleep a lot more. I don't feel like doing the work that I need to do. I bail on plans and like I like the idea of going to the beach or the pool is not for me. Like I'm already like kind of like schwitzing just thinking about it. But like it's just too hot. And I think it used to be once upon a time, like in LA, for example, where you would escape to LA for beautiful things to do. Malibu's right there, and it's just like the romantic summer is still alive, I feel, whether it's through like mediums like film, TV, or even social media too. But that's not for me. Like I just need to be like on the couch with the curtains like closed off and dark, and I need to sleep for like 3 hours at a time during the day, and it's almost like I need to.
Yeah.
So not that I feel the depression that comes from kind of sort of like the somatic, like somatically I feel like these are signs that point to depression, but like I feel great. It's just I have accepted summers is not my thing, and I'm very much a winter person. And I think also there's some truth to the fact that like you kind of grow up craving the thing that you never really had growing up in LA. Like we don't really have snow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean we have Big Bear and Mountain High, but like that's like really shit snow. But yeah, I mean that's what I was thinking of, and I was thinking immediately of how do I ask you if you read these books, or do you want me to go in on it? No, I mean,
you just start however you want to talk about them.
I love The Guest. I don't know where to.
Yeah, The Guest by Emma Cline.
By Emma Cline. This was the first and only book I read of hers, and yes, there is the story of Alex, the main character, just kind of in this like sleepy pill-filled days of making it through Labor Day to be reunited with her boyfriend, who just kind of threw her by the wayside. There's a lot of issues of classism. There's a lot of issues of or discussions of classism, discussions of being a woman in your 20s, and just besides all that, I love how Emma writes about summer in this, and how she is, or Emma, if not Emma, Alex is very much a summer hater.
Okay.
As she's reveling and then trying to survive through the Hamptons. I think there's a lot of honest portrayal of how like your mind just gets into a daze, you're not really thinking straight, and you're just kind of going from one air-conditioned room to another as retreat, that I really loved about this book. So
you found your kindred summer hater.
In Alex. Yeah, Alex is a summer hater. In a lot of ways, it is also like kind of, I feel for her as that 22-year-old woman. I think there's still that in me too. The decisions that she makes throughout to survive through the Labor Day weekend in the Hamptons is not what I relate to, but more so just a sort of sense of like ennui and inertia that happens in the summer. And I thought I'm been on the hunt for more books that kind of is honest about the portrayal of summer. Yeah.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
I appreciate your openness about summer. I mean, that's a quarter of your year. That's a season, like you said, seasonal affective disorder. And you don't hear about it much with summer, but yeah, that's real. One thing that pops into my mind is summer as a kid meant I was out of school. Yeah. And it did mean I was probably going to get on a slip and slide at some point. I was probably going to do at least one good sleepover at a friend, hang out with my siblings, because I had a bunch of those to play with. And yeah, it was freedom. It was freedom for my mind to wander, to be outside. But just like Friday nights became the fun party night when I got a little older, now a Friday night rolls around and I get excited, but I haven't done anything intentional on a Friday night in forever. Like Friday means nothing to me now. And sort of similarly with summer, I'm like, ooh, summer's around the corner. But then it happens and I'm like, oh, there's a lot that aggravates me. My neighbors have their windows open, so I hear them more. The heat, the mood people get in, the way the heat kind of alters the way they behave toward you. It's a little more aggressive, I would say. Riding in a hot car, with I was on the bus on the way here today and the air conditioning wasn't working. So I was like kind of sweating.
Yeah.
And, no, it's real.
There's a really, when you said sweaty car, there's a really, the passage that sticks out to me is just about how she talks about her legs sticking to the upholstery of her car.
Yeah.
And these are the things that I remember at summer or as an adult. And I wonder, because I relished summer when I was a kid too. I was not always the summer hater. I used to be able to go to my friend's place to go to play in the pool, or it just meant more sleepovers. It meant summer camp, which I love. I just love meeting or making new friends from all walks of life. But I wonder if it's also that summer or the sun or it is just getting hotter. Yes.
Well, and most people as adults, even in LA, they got to work their Monday to Friday, and then they have the weekend to drive out to Malibu. But everyone's driving out to Malibu. And the world is in your way, and just to get into the natural world isn't as relaxing as you'd hope it was.
Yes.
When you're a kid and you're taking the beach bus out there, and on a Tuesday. It's real. I mean, I do think I like summer, but by no means is it my best season.
Mm-hmm.
And it does have its drawbacks that I can feel as I hear you saying this.
Yeah. And as someone who I try to, or kind of look at my year as spring being the vision boarding season, where I kind of want to set my intention about what my year goes into, where I decide where I put my heart and my efforts into. And then fall is when I see abundance, or I see clarity or harvest from what I reap
your harvest.
Yeah. And then winter is time of enjoying it, but then the summer period is the actual work period. So there's something there too where it's I think it just feels like a slog.
Mm-hmm.
Or I think I know that this is summer is a period where I want to get shit done, but then given that the earth's temperature is getting literally hotter, it's just going against my own ability to move forward and endeavor, which is why I find it's a frustrating time of the year. It's also when I'm just a little bit more foggy. So yeah, in a lot of ways I found that in Alex that I really loved.
That's so cool.
Yeah. And so I think also this book is so stylish. There's things that have been said about this book before about the ending, which is just, you kind of decide for yourself or use your imagination as to what really happened to Alex at the end, which I find fascinating. I think a lot of people want to find closure in a book, especially in a very plot forward a piece of fiction. Of course you're going to want some sort of resolution or to know what happened, but I think Emma's great at kind of subverting that. And so I love those sort of open-endedness too.
Yeah.
But that was kind of just it was nice that this book was that, in addition to just honest truth about summer. And I think it's cool that you could have so much really questionable characters, morally depraved characters coming into the mix, and nothing really happening in the Hamptons, which is always set up to be this beautiful destination place for New Yorkers, or so
once again, maybe an image of summer
totally.
that maybe isn't really what it's cracked up to be. I love that description you just gave of it. It sounds rich with life, and it seems like there's probably some symbolism in that sort of fugue state ending where it's this is all just gonna evaporate because this is all kind of thin to begin with.
It's also really stylish. A book about a unreliable narrator who was on drugs could sound very one note, but Emma, I don't know, I need to start reading more of her stuff, because this alone is just so stylish. And Alex seems like someone who I might not align with, but like I root for her.
Nice.
So yeah, I mean, I also like kind of informing how I would love to write. Like, say I want to go into essays in the future. Like, that's just something that I will definitely reference.
That's cool.
For a while.
And you talked a couple times about the on way of being in your early 20s, and that is so much of it. It's having like this ambition for what you want out of life, but this sort of aimlessness in creating it, and sort of a grappling for trying to see if it even exists in the world, because you're not sure that it does yet. Yeah. And sometimes you're discovering that it doesn't, and then you're having to pivot and go, okay, well, what is life? I mean, and oftentimes like that just creates kind of like a lot of boringness and loneliness and sort of reflectiveness. Yeah. Sorry.
Oh no, go ahead.
I was just thinking, as I reflect on like my early 20s, and I can condense it into a bunch of really wild stories or whatever, cautionary stories, but most of the time I think I was just kind of alone and kind of working jobs and wandering through how to be a human being.
Yeah. Being in your 20s probably just feels like summer. Like my 20s was like my summer, like where you feel like you have to be out because your friends are going out, or you're going to see every single club. I still love going to parties and I still love to be out the clubs, but it just feels like a different time now versus, actually I love it more now than I did the 20s, when I felt like I was just freaking wandering aimlessly. I don't even know what I was doing, just kind of like walking through a slog of options, and even your friends are different then too. So yeah, your friends then, they're just like nervous alliances. Yeah. Where you're like, all right, I kind of like doing the same thing too. And you're like really telling the truth about whether you want to do what they're doing, but you're like, I don't want to like not be cool.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I feel like that pressure to kind of be a really well-adjusted 20-year-old doesn't go away when you're a teen. It was well into like my 20s for me too.
Yeah. That peer influence. Yeah, and it's so real. Like wanting to move at the same speed as other people. So real. Yeah. Yeah. And important, because you're like, you need those other people to help you form a sense of identity, or to wander through the desert of sort of experimenting with your identity. Yeah. Well, yeah, cool. That book, really, hearing you talk about it brings up all those feelings in me and really captures a lot. So I'd never heard of it. So
oh my God, I totally recommend it. It goes fast.
Yeah. I mean, I'm envisioning on your Goodreads like an anti-summer book club.
I honestly, that should have been my description. I think I just said Emma Cline is so stylish.
Yeah, I just wonder if you could find more anti-summer books.
Yeah, I mean, if
I come across them, I'm now going to send them to you.
And like, I would love an anti-summer playlist. Like Lana Del Rey, "Summertime Sadness" comes up. Like she has been the proponent for it. Okay, like
she's held it down
for years. Yeah. But you know,
well, if anyone's listening and has some good anti-summer books, comment below.
Love that.
Yeah.
So on the flip side, I love winter. Okay. Going back to what I said about, what did I say? Oh, about how growing up in LA, I've always wondered what weather is like, but more specifically snow. Like I think I just still romanticize snow a lot. I went to college in Pittsburgh, where it wasn't like your heavy white snowfall, but it was still very gray and gloomy, unpredictable patches of rain from the lakes that come through, and there was snow, and I have fond memories of that weather because I was just not familiar with it. There was so many times when I would go out in the snow in just like a pair of shorts, and my friends from New York would call me crazy. But like that's just like what I wanted because I didn't have it. But all that to say, the rest of these or two of these books, I'll start with this one, Last Night at the Lobster by Stewart Onan. He is from Pittsburgh, and I feel like, I mean, I am not a Pittsburgh native, nor can I say that I know Pittsburgh well because I haven't visited since I graduated, really. But I feel like it captures just like what a winter in Pennsylvania, but also New England looks like. Last Night at the Lobster, just a quick summary, is just about the last day of a Red Lobster being opened somewhere in Massachusetts. And it's seen through the main character who manages the Red Lobster. And it's just very, it's rooted in realism. and he is just navigating his relationships with the last employees that show up for the last day of work, days before Christmas. He also has a lot on his own mind, such as the fact that he had a relationship with one of his employees, not in a scandalous way. It's just very much like straightforward. But they broke up. He is now with another woman who is now pregnant, and she has another boyfriend. So like there's that on his mind about how like, will there be something re-sparked at the last day at the Red Lobster, or like will they ever discuss what might have happened? But again, I think on the theme of like nothing really happens. Like this is just like literally, it's just like you see them walk through the last days, greeting the final diners and different parties, big and small, the different arguments that happen between the employees in the kitchen or the front of house, who gets what tips. During his break time, before he opens, he uses a snowplow to help like the walkway just like fill with snow, so he like gets a snowplow. It's just like very mundane things, but I felt so alive at the same time. In the opposite way, where like the guest, for me, being in summer, like nothing, I don't feel warm about anything about that happened in the guest. Like this, I felt on the flip side, yes, there's nothing happening. It's really frigid cold. Like there's a storm happening. I felt there's a lot of warmth and just like a lot of realness in how like people who are working class, who are just, trying to make some money, kind of figure life out together. It's a snapshot of several people's lives just in one night, but it was really well done. And like, I think it's very sparse. I think right now people are talking about it because, I've been thinking about this right now because the Red Lobster that I used to go to in Torrance is closed because of the mass, like all of the Red Lobsters closing.
Yeah.
I think that came out like 3 months ago, and I think this came up on people's radar on Reddit, I think, as a result. So I see people talking about it on Reddit.
Interesting. Prescient?
Yeah.
Is that
a little bit? Yeah. And like this came out like 2007? I don't even know. But it was like way before, like a while ago. And
it's crazy when these sort of corporate spots go under, and like these things that were they were kind of manufactured to be replicated, speaking to that sort of the ills of image and the lack of like originality in our culture, but the humanity you bring in there is different every time. And so the humans are the X factor, and you say the warmth you feel reading it for the employees, anyone who's worked in any kind of environment like that understands that it's literally your coworkers keeping you alive in spirit. And thinking to winter, it's almost like winter reduces us to our core.
Totally.
Because we're often crammed into tighter environments with other people. The outside world's a little more hostile. Yeah. As far as the cold goes. Yeah. And it almost sounded like a play. You were the way you were talking about it. Oh my God, it would work so well
as a play.
Right.
Like it's only like really 2-3 settings. There's one setting where he does go to the mall that's across the street. So I think this Red Lobster, the way I picture it, is inside a strip mall, but he's going across to a shopping mall to buy a last minute gift for his wife. And there's also something to be said about the fact that he's going out there a few days out before Christmas to look for his gift for not his wife, his girlfriend. So I think also everyone, like you said, like looks out for each other, but in this book, it's a novella. I think it's like it's like 140 some pages, but like everyone is definitely aware of each other and also cares about each other, which I think really does happen in the wintertime. People are just much in closer confines. There is really little work to be done when it comes to Christmas time for a lot of families. And so I think there's a lot of care in what we show each other, friends or family or otherwise, but also extending that to our employees or to our coworkers or whoever we work with. Like, it was really interesting to see how, like, yes, there might be little tiffs that happen throughout the day that any workday would show, but like they were all very aware of each other and their mannerisms, and were like, they like, even like just knowing that Manny, who is the general manager of Red Lobster, like has this like sort of like forlorn heart over his employee who is now with another man. Like everyone else sees it and they're like, oh, like, is Manny okay? So like in a way that's like, I don't know, it's like very real, and it's like what you would see in any sort of retail or hospitality or food job. Like, you just have each other's back. So
Yeah, and it's like you spend more time with these people than your family sometimes.
Yeah,
And so
you do.
like it is this sort of forced transactional, yeah, like family. You don't want to look at it that way, and you definitely don't want to work for someone who says we're all like family around here, because that's the kiss of death.
Yeah.
But I went into the Gap yesterday because I needed a shirt.
Yes.
Forgive me, I can't afford anything that's not that, whatever.
Right.
And this woman was working, and I asked her, hey, have you worked here for like 20 years? And she said 18. And like, I asked it just to be polite. I recognized her. And she's been there since I was 20, 21, 22.
You don't see that anymore.
You don't
like,
see that anymore. And it's at the Gap, like the most generic clothing brand out there. And I said to her, well, thank you. You kind of making me feel like time stood still.
Oh.
Yeah. And she was really appreciative
that's awesome.
of hearing it. Yeah. Because it was like, I could have been me 15, 20 years ago when I was in there. And so this weird emotional continuity occurred inside of a very unromantic Gap location, similar to the Red Lobster in that book.
Yeah.
As you're describing it to me.
I mean, it's like corporate's just always going to be there, I feel. And we decide who we want to work under, but it's always just nice to like find camaraderie in those very people that you used to work with in the trenches, and they just know all the bullshit that each of us went through.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying like we always bring our problems from home. Like, it's hard to like leave your problems at home at the door, sometimes seep through. And so the way that you would like to maybe be acknowledged that by coworkers is just not going to be the same way that like it gets acknowledged by someone you love.
Yeah.
But the way that they acknowledge each other is sort of like misgivings or quirks is, I don't know, it's like kind of endearing because it's just a little snapshot, and it's like I would love to know. I mean, basically when it closes, like Manny had offered jobs to some of the employees to go to the Olive Garden, so there's like this sort of continuation of like it doesn't end here, like we're just gonna end up at another like sort of franchise, whatever, big box place or restaurant, and we're just gonna do this shit all over again. But as mundane as that sounds, I think there was just a lot of heart in this that I like really recognize. So
that's so cool. And once you get to the Olive Garden, you really are family.
They're your family.
There you have to be family. Yeah. That's the one place where it's not toxic. But what an interesting choice.
Yeah.
And it definitely makes me want to read it. Not that you're here to try to persuade me to read every book you bring in, but I don't know, that it's just like feels very real, and what a cool contrast to The Guest.
Yeah. I hope to read it again on Christmas time. I have a lot of books that I want to revisit and during Christmas, and the other one is, again, another snowy Christmas time book, Small Things Like These by Claire Keegan. It is probably my favorite, like one of my favorite. My friend recommended it to me. I went into it blind and not knowing much about Irish history, like modern Irish history. And this also novella. I think I have a thing for like short books right now. After like 10 years of just like reading dense texts about the city or history of LA or whatever, it's just like I just want to not turn my brain off, but I want to be in someone else's like world and also have it be super quick. But Claire is like so good at like world making within this Irish town that's also governed by the Catholic Church. Like so many things, corrupted or otherwise, are kind of go through the Catholic Church. So a quick synopsis here is there is a coal/lumber provider, and he's a father to like a handful of children, and he has a wife. He has his own ways of having come up, where he didn't know his blood parents, but he was kind of taken under the wing to be raised. And then so he just kind of has this sort of like humble heart, good working man, well liked in the community, also because he provides warmth during the wintertime with coal and lumber. And he discovers something questionable that's happening in one of the churches, or just one of the nun houses. He discovers a imprisoned girl. There's a lot of historical background that I feel like I will either like cumbersomely kind of go into or just really shortchange. And I don't want to do that at all. But
it's a fiction. It's a work of fiction.
It's a work of fiction.
But it alludes to things that have happened.
Yeah, such as like the Magdalene laundries, which were during the late 20th century in Ireland, where a lot of women who were, I guess, thrown out by society for either crudeness or for sex working or for what other transgressions there were. They were thrown into these Magdalene laundries. The author herself said that it's not about that, but there's a lot to be said about what these places were for women, like these places that were for women that the church kind of just let happen. But again, I think this is on Christmas Day. I will spoil it again. Sorry. So spoiler alert here, but the man has a lot of like sort of moral and like, no, I think moral assuredness. Like, I think he just feels he knows what is right and wrong. And he really like counts the little things and remembers the little things that people have done for him that they never had to. So I kind of alludes to the title, Small Things Like These. He just remembers the small things that like have made him who he is today and the chances that people took on him, as someone who also didn't have this like sort of polished religious life with stable parents or whatever. So he finds the girl, he decides that he wants to take her out of her confines that the nuns in the nun house were hiding like to the public. It ends with him bringing the girl back to the family, to the house, where the wife also was just like kind of fall, like I guess the wife was also just like fall under the radar, like kind of like go with the sheep, don't raise any feathers, like don't ruffle any feathers. This is a church we're talking about who governs this town. Like, you're not gonna go up against this church by saying like, hey, like what are you doing with this, like hiding these girls or whatever. So it ends with him taking the girl back to the house and introducing him to the daughters and wife, and then it ends there. So again, It's another book where it's like you leave it up to like what might happen. Like maybe he will be banned from the town, or I don't know if that's going to happen because they make it very clear he's a beloved coal and lumber guy who works really hard. Like he just like he's really well liked. So like I don't think that's going to happen, but maybe the church will do something about it. But you just kind of, again, it's open-ended. I think I just really love open-ended books. But
for the reason that you could fill it in with your own imagination, depending on your mood and
your mood, or like maybe even just your moral compass. I don't know, but I feel myself now that I'm like saying these things out loud, I'm like, I think I'm really drawn to just like these like open-ended what you don't know what's going to happen next, but you fill it in.
Well, the story gets to continue. And that feels more accurate to life because nothing ever ties up into a bow with life. Exactly.
And I think like love the fact that it's in wintertime again, and it feels very like Chekhov a little bit, like where like here's a man in a small snowy town and he comes across like other like regular people, and like what really happens, like is there anything at stake, like, but you kind of build what is at stake. Like, is it really important to you that, you know, you discover something like a injustice, like, you know, a young girl who's looking for her, like who just gave birth to a baby and is split from her baby, like what are you going to do? So
big choices. And then it sort of ends at the beginning of the choice being made, after the choice is made.
True.
And so it's like the choice.
It is the choice.
That is the conflict.
And I think that even like I don't think I'm a very philosophical person, but when it comes to like me picking up the books and then figuring out what fictional pieces like have resonated with me, I find that there's like things that are like I have to do with moral quandaries, and I'm like, oh, I think that's just maybe I need to start acknowledging that like I do like to think about the larger things about life,
right and wrong. I
don't know, I think it really does inform my own integrity and how I move through life.
That's pretty cool that just talking about these couple books you're like, oh wait a minute, that's where that is. Because I'm so curious why people bring what they bring, and you're doing a really good job of explaining it. So
no, I think also like the winter part is like I just love that it feels cold, and again, in juxtaposition to a lot of books that like make summer the big character, or like summer is the setting, this one does a really good job at also just showing like kind of kindness is discovered, and like the appreciation for small things is discovered through frigidness and
Yeah.
through cold and like winter. Like your mind is very much, his mind is very much alive and working and active, and as he's going about his day through the winter season, which I thought was a good way to show winter, because I think winter people do come alive.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, the days are shorter, and
But that bite in the air is invigorating.
Yeah.
And then we do huddle together for warmth.
yeah. So I really appreciated it for that reason too.
Cool.
Yeah.
No, I mean, another good one. And as for the like small novella feeling,
Yeah.
I get that, because it also builds your self-confidence as a reader, where you're like, okay, I completed it. Because I do like look at the page numbers sometimes, where I'm like, okay, what, because I'm reading a lot of dry nonfiction. That's where I'm at.
Yeah.
And
that's
I
your journey.
love it. I find it interesting, but like the pace does start to corrode at me. I've brought up this book, The Image, on like 3 or 4 episodes of this
And
podcast.
you're still working on
now.
it. Yeah.
I'm like, I gotta get through
Yeah.
this thing.
I read on the Kindle sometimes, and I can't like not look at what page number I am, and also Kindle can tell you like what percentage you're completed,
yeah.
or worst of all is the time of left for you to finish the chapter.
Because they know your reading pace.
Yeah,
Wow.
and I'm like, this is really alarming, and also like it does feel like it makes me feel like it feels like I'm dragging more.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Like I'm like and then it just becomes less about like me getting into the story, but more like I have 5 minutes left. Like
Yes.
I'm tapping away.
Yes. The numbers just ruin
yeah.
everything, I swear.
Yeah.
But
I'm very much
obsessed with them.
Yeah, I'm very much still like a completionist. So like it just feels good to like
To finish
this.
I'm totally with you. Yeah. No, it's
yeah.
a big thing. Okay, well, we got one book left.
We got one book
It
left.
looks like a cool cover.
Yes, I Who Have Never Known Men had come out in. Oh, I shouldn't say that. I shouldn't. Don't quote me on this, but like 70s, 80s, like Jacqueline
We can
Hartman.
flip open and check
Let's
it
see.
out.
Okay, let's pause for
Yeah,
the listeners.
we'll
95.
okay.
Jacqueline Hartman had since passed away, but this was. The reason I brought this book is because unlike these, which are like the extremes of winter and summer, this has no weather in it. It's just every day is the same. It's very, very minimal, sparse world making in it. Synopsis here is that there is a young girl. Well, she starts young, like she has grown with a commune of women, and they don't know how they got there. So one day, the guards that were taking care of them in this sort of man-made prison where they would be fed, but they're all on top of each other in this small, I guess, like underground shed. Suddenly, a siren goes off. The guards all disappear. The women find a way to get themselves out of the prison, and they come up to the surface and see that there's just plains and just emptiness for days. Like there's like, I think a common theory is that these women were put on a terraformed planet or something or otherwise, and it's an experiment, and experiment somehow is over, or it was underfunded or whatever, and the guards left, and now like these are just the remnants of the subjects. It's very haunting, but also I love that there is no season or no weather, nothing to like for you to feel the warmth on the sun or the frigidness of the cold. Like I think it's a very moderate, like in my head I'm like it's like 65 and clear every day, like no clouds, like blue sky, which could drive anyone crazy.
Yeah, the sameness.
So yeah,
The ideal sameness.
yeah, the ideal sameness,
Lack of variation.
yeah.
And yeah, so aside from the weather, like what was your takeaway on the symbolism of it as it applies to life, or our current culture? Because I think about the absence of men in the sense that like, okay, now a woman is free to be what a woman is, and yet like they're in this conundrum that was seemingly man-made, so they're not
True.
free of that. They're imprisoned actually.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, it's just like what is the experiment of it mean to you almost?
Like it's interesting if you follow that thread of like if this was a terraformed planet or land that was man-made, then yeah, like they are even if you come above surface, like you're very much in this prison where you don't get to live a full life, and the elements that are there are very against you. the woman, like the main character, she does not have a name. She just goes through searching and searching for the rest of her life. I think it could be frustrating probably to read hundreds of pages about like women who are dying off in their group, but also like they just keep on going to find like the end of this, or like where is humanity, where is the lush world that some people remember. I think what I took away from that is that like we will always try to find meaning in our nonsense. Like even when we have very little to go off of, just by being human alone, we're always just we just want to know like, why are we here?
Yeah.
So like terraformed or otherwise, it's just like, why the F am I here?
When we were talking earlier about hope and hopelessness, and it's like, we are at our core powered by hope. Yeah. Like that will to survive. Yeah. And even, like you said, these strange scenarios, you're still going to just like keep trudging forward. You're just going to keep walking.
Yeah. I think that, because the most haunting part about this book is like just knowing that the women are aging. So like she's collecting as many stories as possible from those who are older than her. But even then I'm realizing that like she probably like she doesn't know what a man looks like. She doesn't know what, I don't know, like there are trees in this world, but like she doesn't know what a car looks like. She doesn't know what like a healthy meal is. And like, so they can tell her all these things, but she's just not going to know what that is. And so like I want to be inside her brain to see what's visualizing all these things because I mean, it's existential horror in a way. But it's interesting to see her grow old too and being like, well, even then at the end, it's like, I want to die with dignity. And she presumably finds a way to die with dignity because she's finding herself to be old and can't carry on any longer. And so I guess in a way, like, I guess I would love for more people to read this story, but I will say it's also frustrating because, I mean, truth be told, you're not going to get an ending. Like, like it's just searching.
And you like want them to read it so they could bring some more information about it.
Like I'd love to hear what other, like, you know, how other people think. I'd love to know how people like hear people's theories about how we got here.
Yeah, the theories, because it sounds like there's so much mystery, and then like this haunting existentialism. Yeah. And you were saying that going back, that you're now just reading books blind. Are we talking like you're just seeing the cover and you're going, or you're like, are you walking into a library and just grabbing one off the shelf with as little thought as possible? Because I love the idea. And, you know, people make the joke, I do judge a book by the cover. Yeah, I know. We all do, like, whatever. But is it as simple as that? You're judging by the cover and not looking at the back?
I will
or is
answer
it not
that.
so strict?
It's not so strict. I love getting recommendations from people. Sometimes it's like I will see, Goodreads is good for this, where like I will see that my friend or someone that, it's not even a friend, like I just like follow this person from college and like they have good taste, and so they just finished a book, and so, or they just started reading it, and I'm like, oh hey, like I'll read that too, which is funny because it'll show up on your timeline that like I'm now currently reading the same book that my friend right below, or non-friend, but just like acquaintance. But I'm like, oh, like I have no originality in this, but that's okay. There's that. And then it's funny because I went to Barnes and Noble a few days ago just to see like the covers of books, and they all look the same. So I don't even know if you can judge a book by its cover anymore because they just all have the same sort of like same color scheme, same illustrations, same like photo direction if it's like a biography or a political memoir or whatever. So I don't try to, I mean, I'd still love to pick up a book randomly, but I more than anything really want to like lean on friends' recommendations.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know Goodreads too much, even though I'm a reader, but I put out my little poetry book. Yeah. And it's gotten some pretty good reviews so far, but one person gave it 3 stars, and I was like, 3 stars? How could you? That's so mean. Why did you even do it? And then I was like, okay, well, I'm going to look up what else they've read. And unfortunately, they had really good taste.
Damn.
I was like,
well,
damn.
It helps you. I don't know. I feel like people can get snarky with it the way that people on Letterboxd kind of use it, but not in a way to like sincerely rate, but just to like be.
And then I looked up some of my favorite books, and I saw that they had 3 stars.
Yeah,
and
you're
like, okay. Yeah,
also, I will say, Goodreads, I don't know whether it's just because it's the mass audience, but I've never agreed with a Goodreads rating.
Oh,
like,
you're right.
I think these are like this got like 3.4 whatever, and I'm like, this is a 5 out of 5 in my opinion.
So there's some books that people love to hate.
Or they're just like they don't get it, or
they do the snarky thing where they're like, no, this isn't in my MA class in whatever.
Right. Or it's
school.
the opposite where it's like New York Times bestseller, beloved 5 out of 5 stars, and I'm like, this was not this is crap
garbage.
Or whatever. So I wouldn't.
Just kind of funny.
I wouldn't trust the Goodreads. Honestly.
Thank you. Yeah,
Rest
I think
assured.
I was searching for you to assure me. So thanks for that.
Yeah, no problem.
No, I don't know. It's just one of those funny peculiarities since everything has a Yelp rating at this point.
Yeah.
It's like we've reduced
Don't
things
trust
down
the
to
ratings.
those, right?
You gotta use it just to remember what you read. I think.
Yeah, exactly. And I got on Goodreads and I made the decision I'm just gonna put 5 stars for every book I enjoy.
Love.
And that's what I'm doing.
That's good.
Now. It's like, and if I don't enjoy it, I just won't even mention it.
Oh yeah, no, I feel like that's a really healthy way of just looking at books. Like, I hate to be harsh, but
Yeah, and there's so many ones that you can like, and why don't you find those and give them good ratings?
Or give every book 4 out of 5 stars and let people guess. Like, is it really 4 out of 5? Or
I saw this meme today. It was a doctor's Yelp page, and he had tweeted it, and they memeified it. But someone said, Dr. So-and-so saved my life, and it had 4 out of 5 stars, and above it he goes, I honestly don't know what else I could have done to get 5 stars.
That's so good.
Yeah, so good. Well, I mean, this conversation was so good. I really appreciated you coming in. Yeah. I loved hearing what you had to say. I had never heard of any of these books, but now I feel like I've lived through some of them, which is like the thrill of doing this podcast and hopefully listening to it. And I've been a fan of your writing forever. Not forever, but several years.
Yeah.
And I'm glad we got to meet in person.
Now we get to be friends.
Yeah, exactly.
The podcaster friends pipeline.
Yeah, exactly. That's how it starts.
Yeah.
Lisa Kwon, is there anywhere people could find your writing in particular? I mentioned Teen Vogue, Paper Dirt.
I also write for local, so LA Public Press. I also write, I'm just all over the place, but you can find me on Lisa S. Kwon and on Twitter.
There we go.
That's a great place to kind of catch up.
Okay, cool. Well, thanks again, and really appreciated having you.
Thank you for having me. It was fun.
All right, and thank you for listening, and happy reading out there. Thank you for listening to another episode of Turek Books. Be sure to like, subscribe, thumbs up, any kind of thing that could help us get listened to or watched by more people. We really appreciated having you and hope to see you again next week with a new guest and plenty of books. Take care until then.